Hello, I'm Carol Jenkins, and thanks for joining us for this episode of the Invisible Americans podcast. Today, we'll get an update on the expanded child tax credit locked in the Senate.
And I'm Jeff Madrick. We will also look at what it takes to feed hundreds of thousands of people in the state of New Jersey who are food insecure today. Elizabeth McCarthy of the Community Food Bank of New Jersey joins us.
But first, what's happening with the child tax credit? The Automatic Benefit for Children, the ABC Coalition, is a group of more than 100 national, state, and grassroots organizations with the mission of creating a child allowance or a guaranteed minimum income for children. The coalition is co-chaired by the Center for the Study of Social Policy and the Children's Defense Fund. Alex Coccia is a senior policy analyst at CSSP. Alex, thanks so much for being with us. The Invisible Americans podcast is delighted to be a member of the ABC Coalition. So thanks for doing this and for bringing us up to date. It's sometimes painful in those meetings to hear what's happening to the expanded child tax credit.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. You know, we're at this point where the House of Representatives passed legislation back in at the end of January that would expand the child tax credit, take some important steps of doing so, and would benefit 16 million children in families with low income. One of the important pieces of that legislation was what's called a look-back provision that gives families that are experiencing economic setbacks a lot of flexibility in order to make sure that they can still claim the credit. We want to make sure that that piece of legislation is not weakened in the Senate. However, we're at a point where it is stalled in the Senate, and the ABC Coalition and a number of partners are urging Senator Schumer to commit to putting the bill on the floor for a vote. We hope that does in fact happen in the weeks to come.
What do you hope doesn't happen?
We hope that there aren't any amendments that will weaken what the House sent over to the Senate. The main one that I think we really support as an example of policy that provides flexibility to families who are earning low incomes and who are going to be facing economic insecurity is that look back provision that allows families to use previous year income to qualify for the credit. So we want to make sure that stays in any version that gets passed out of the Senate.
Amazing that they're still trying to do away with it. I find it amazing. This group has been dedicated to a version of the child tax credit for a few years now. Our podcasts and people related to us. So we cheer you on. There's always someone in the Senate or House who wants to foul up the works.
We're all pushing together on this. So it's great that Invisible Americans is part of the coalition.
So Alex, let's talk a little bit more about the coalition. National, state, grassroots organizations, a really strong parent board as well. How did it come about? Just take us through the daily work of the coalition.
It's the Automatic Benefit for Children Coalition, and the goal of it is really to create a child allowance or a guaranteed income for children that provides families with regular, meaningful assistance and promotes racial and economic justice. And the coalition got started prior to the expansion of the child tax credit under the American Rescue Plan in 2021, really as a way to build the groundwork, build the research groundwork, the advocacy groundwork, the coalition groundwork for getting a guaranteed income for kids. As the expanded child tax credit made its way through ARPA and was being implemented, it was clear that this is a very important mechanism to get families resources that they need. And so the coalition has really developed to focus on pushing for the expanded credit to be made permanent, but also recognizing that any federal agency that's going to administer this credit really needs to be equipped to meet the needs of families and children. And so a lot of the work that the coalition does is focused on administrative advocacy and thinking through how can the IRS better serve families with children. So we've been focused a lot on supporting IRS efforts to reduce racial disparities in auditing, to rebuild trust with communities who have been audited in the past. We've been focused on ways to make sure that single parents can claim the credit effectively and efficiently through things like simplified filing portals, or in this year, which is very exciting, the direct file tool, which we hope will expand in the future. But we also, of course, think legislatively. And so we are really looking at 2025 as the major opportunity to get an expanded child tax credit. That's with the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2025. And so really hoping to lay the groundwork in this coming year for a strong and robust package that expands the CTC. And you mentioned our parent board. The work of the ABC Coalition is really guided by our parent and advisory board. And a crucial part of their work was to co-develop with a number of our member organizations a set of child allowance principles that guide for policymakers the crucial elements to making sure that any kind of guaranteed income that is passed, whether through the child tax credit or through another policy, can actually meet families' needs. And so I'm hoping we can certainly share around the link to those principles, but those are really the set that guide our work.
Well, congratulations on all this expansion.
Thank you, Alex. It's great work. We're delighted to be a part of it. And we'll be talking with members of the Parent Advisory Board as well. So excellent work. Thank you.
We appreciate your partnership, and thanks so much.
So what does it take to feed New Jersey's food insecure population? It takes the largest food bank in the state, the size of 4 football fields, where food is packaged for distribution across many of the most needy counties. We talked with Elizabeth McCarthy, President and CEO of the Community Food Bank of New Jersey.
Elizabeth, thanks so much for being with us today. The work that you're doing is amazing. If you could tell us how you got engaged and a little bit about the work.
I've worked for several decades with families living in poverty. So whether that was domestic violence victims, people in the child welfare and juvenile justice systems, on the mental health front. And then really during the pandemic, the organization I was working with, Sheltering Arms, found that all the families we worked with just had a desperate need, day one for food, as soon as they couldn't work. And that's really when I sort of got interested in this intersection between food and all the other services that families living in poverty need.
Well, I was shocked to discover when somebody described the space that you have as 4 football fields large.
A huge warehouse with an area for volunteers, an industrial kitchen for our job training program, our culinary program, as well as, lots of other spaces for people to meet.
Well, let me just say this. I'm stunned at how successful you've been dedicating yourself to. It's quite extraordinary. And it is also extraordinary that America doesn't seem to care all that much. Now, you're probably going to disagree with me because you're optimistic. But this 4 football field size food distribution area is one example of how successful this has been. But tell us exactly what you do for your families.
The Community Food Bank of New Jersey covers 15 out of the 21 counties in New Jersey. And we have the warehouse in Hillside, the large one that you're referring to, and also a small warehouse in Egg Harbor Township, so down in South Jersey. We are providing food through a partner network of about 800 pantries, soup kitchens, school feeding programs, et cetera, and really trying to also get to some of the root causes of hunger. I think there's many misconceptions about who's hungry in this country and what the causes are. And so we're really also trying to sort of make people understand who is in line in pantries and what gets them there and how people wind up there.
So who's in line in pantries?
largely it is people who are working, or at least where, families where at least one person is working, often working two jobs. This is really an issue of wages not having kept up with the cost of living. And, food is one place where there are some resources available. So families are coming there so that they can, pay their rent and not get evicted. It's filling a gap for people, getting them from paycheck to paycheck, which is how people are living.
Elizabeth, talk to us about the size, the number of meals. Was it like just shy of 100 million, or
Just shy of 100 million. Yeah, it is hard to get your head around that huge number. I know. We estimate there are about 815,000 food insecure people in the state of New Jersey. People think of New Jersey as a pretty wealthy state, but that also means it's an expensive place to live. And so there are just so many people living on the margin.
So tell us what the process is. I know that you have intake and then you have volunteers. We're happy to have an Invisible Americans podcast team coming to participate, and then the distribution. So where does that intake come from?
The food that comes in here comes from a number of sources. Some of it is food that we get from the federal government. Some of it is food that we purchase with money from the state of New Jersey and from private funding. And then some of it is food that is donated from all the grocery stores and chains in New Jersey. Some of them come in here, some we can direct directly to pantries. So a pantry can go and pick up from, Amazon or Trader Joe's or somebody directly rather than it having to come through here. It's one less step that keeps things fresh. You'll see when you come volunteer, and thank you for doing that part of what you're doing then is sorting food into different areas. So, because we can get a donation from, Amazon that might be 6 pallets of food, but it's all different kinds of things. So sorting that and then putting that into boxes for seniors or boxes for people living with diabetes, or something we call family pack, which are boxes that are sent home with children on Fridays, because weekends are often a very difficult time for people to have enough food since the children don't have meals, at school. So that is kind of the operation that happens here. And then the trucks go back out to the pantries, the soup kitchens, et cetera, every day and bring food from this warehouse so that it can be directly served to our neighbors.
Well, I just find it an amazing operation, and it must have something to do with your own energy and commitment. Are there other people who find your commitment contagious?
I actually think I get it from our staff here. That's where my energy and optimism comes from. They're really an amazing group. I started here last summer and just right away was just so blown away by sort of the commitment that people really have to food insecurity. People could get a warehouse job somewhere else. People could be a truck driver somewhere else, probably for more money. They're very devoted to this cause. Many have suffered food insecurity themselves in the past. And so I think really feel a commitment to trying to help with our mission.
Talk to us about the volunteers. Is that most of the work that goes into the sorting?
As an organization, we have just over 300 employees, but our volunteer hours last year were 88,000 hours, which is about another 42 employees is what it would be equal to. So a major part of our operation. I mean, we could not do what we do without volunteers. And so sometimes it's groups from work like you, and it's team building, and it's also just a good way to give back. Sometimes it's children's sports teams, Girl Scout troops, school groups. We really have a wide range. Families. Last week, we had a 24-hour packathon where we had people coming from 9 a.m. on Friday to 9 a.m. on Saturday. People worked shifts and were able to pack 160,000 meals in that 24 hours.
What's the future? Is there anything like this in other states? Obviously, there are 1 or 2 bigger states than New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, we're part of the Feeding America network. So there are food banks in almost every state. I think there's 1 or 2 in the Midwest that don't have one, but share territory with other places. We really learn from other places. Hopefully they learn from us. I think what's next is really trying again to get to the root causes, trying to shorten the lines at pantries to have people have more stability. It's great that we have this pantry network and families can get very fresh food, which is anyone who went to a food pantry even 10 years ago, I think would be surprised to see what they're like now with fresh produce and, frozen proteins and things that are really much healthier food for families as opposed to just all canned or shelf stable foods. But trying to get to the point where people whether it is through New Jersey, we're lucky that they have a higher SNAP benefit than in some other states, but things like the child tax credit. This summer, New Jersey has a program where families will get some funding for food for over the summer, which is great because that's a tough time when kids are not in school. So really trying to get it so that families are not wondering where their next meal is coming from, wondering if there's going to be, enough food at the pantry, that they have consistent access to healthy food.
Elizabeth, tell us what you think about the certain governors of states who have rejected summer food. What I can just imagine your response to.
I honestly can't imagine. I mean, it's hard to really understand how that seems defensible when we're talking about children in particular, that anyone thinks that having funding for families to feed their children in the summer is not a good idea is really hard to get my head around. And again, we're very lucky in New Jersey that our leadership is very committed to this issue of food insecurity. But yeah, it's unfathomable to me. Like if you're not committed to feeding children, then maybe you should not be leading in our government.
Precisely. And your experience with Sheltering Arms, with all of the child care and child development, you speak today about the packages going to the homeless kids. We're watching the child tax credit got hung up in the Senate. As an activist and facing, this rush to get food to hungry children. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Often, we have things that we think will work, but we don't have good data. Here we even have good data. Like we see what happened as soon as that child tax credit was eliminated. The number of children living in poverty just skyrocketed. And so again, like it's one where you would think that would be, bipartisan, that, having children not living in poverty should be something that all of us agree with. So it's really hard to imagine. So it is something that we advocate for, that, and, keeping SNAP levels higher for families, keeping things like work requirements out of SNAP, I think are just really important to keep families, again, having that consistent access.
When I was writing my latest book on child poverty, I had interviewed a number of people who were already graduating college or in graduate school who remember the summer food programs and how often their little siblings, girls and boys, would wait at the window for the bus to come or come where it's supposed to park. And it's just heartbreaking. I don't quite know how your heart takes it.
Well, I think being part of the solution at least helps with that, I think, and just seeing, again, the energy of our staff and sort of how committed people are to just helping other people is really, it's actually very optimistic work from that perspective.
We would like to make sure that as many volunteers as possible can find you. So can you tell us how they do that?
It's a very user-friendly website, cfbnj.org, communityfoodbanknewjersey.org. And there is a button that you click to volunteer, and you literally can just pick a shift. It'll show you available shifts. You can sign people up, anybody over the age of 12. We actually do even have some family days where younger kids can come. We kind of set up things for them because I think for children, it is such a great volunteer opportunity. First of all, it's hard to find them when your kids are young. And this is so tangible. Like kids understand the feeling of being hungry, right? Even a child who knows where their next meal is coming from at least can relate to that. And what if they didn't know? And just having that conversation on that very basic level, I think is just very beneficial for children. And they can really feel part of the solution as they are packing up boxes that they know are going to other families.
So, Elizabeth, when we talk about kids, we have in mind small children that we are absolutely concerned about. But, the kids in college also are often facing this challenge to find enough to eat.
Absolutely. And I think they were actually a very invisible population. When people think of food insecurity, they don't think of students in college, but 1 in 3 college students says that at some point in their college career, they are food insecure, which is just a staggering number. So we are working with more and more colleges to set up pantries right on site so that students, even if they have, late classes or things like that, have access to food that they can, some single serve things they can throw in a microwave because that's the life of a college student, but also things like produce and protein for those who have cooking facilities. It's so important. I mean, here are people who are trying, often working at the same time, going to do classes to try to get themselves to a place where they'll have an income that will sustain them. And so anything that we can do to help them, in pursuit of that degree, I think is really important.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And we hope you get a flood of volunteers.
Thank you for coming to volunteer. That's wonderful.
We're looking forward to it. We're very excited. Thanks for being with us.
Wonderful. Take care.
Thank you, and congratulations on all the success.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Invisible Americans podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. But we urge you to visit our website for transcripts, show notes, research, and additional information about our guests and their work. That's www.theinvisibleamericans.com. Please follow us on social media and our new YouTube channel. And our blog posts are up on Medium as well as our website. That's www.theinvisibleamericans.com. Jeff and I will see you the next time.